understandings of problems, developing workable solutions, figuring out whether solutions are actually effective, being accountable, and also learning as you go along. So you have here a few examples of ways in which research comes in. There is, the basic development of programs and the reporting on those and the figuring out how to move forward as you move towards the, move through programs. But there's also this basic principle of evidence-based working that a lot of organizations take very, very seriously, but also take it as a basic foundation for legitimacy. So how that works out, that's a different question. But the need to do research is very much understood, and we saw that also in the research that we did. And then organizations working in different countries, different contexts, also learn about what they don't know and what they need to know as they move forward through programs. So in all kinds of places and in all kinds of ways, research comes in. And that's also why I think it's important that we hold this session today. Please move on, Alexander.
Thank you very much, Margit, for that introduction. And then I would like to invite Jan, who's going to introduce you to the Work No Child's Business Alliance and why they have commissioned this research.
Yeah, thanks, Alexander, and thanks, Margit, for the introduction. I will give you a brief context of why, as Work No Child's Business Alliance, we have actually initiated this research at Wageningen University, which Margit and our research colleagues will be presenting today, and which we'll discuss in further detail with my colleagues from different countries in which we work with the Work No Child's Business Alliance. But first, a bit of context of what the Work No Child's Business Alliance is and how we got to this research. Well, my name is Jan Apperloo, and I'm part of the I'm working for Save the Children Netherlands and part of the Work No Child's Business Alliance, providing technical advice around gender and around research in the Alliance, together with colleagues from UNICEF and from the Stop Child Labour Alliance. Next slide, please. Just a bit of context for you all, where the Work No Child's Business Alliance focuses on. The Work No Child's Business Alliance focuses, maybe obviously from the name, on tackling the issue, addressing the issue of child labor. And we do that through an integrated approach. This session is called the Strategic Partnership Lab, but actually the Work No Child's Business Alliance is not part of one of the current Strengthening Civil Society Strategic Partnership Labs, and therefore it has not only a focus on advocacy. Advocacy is a strong component of the program, but it also has a strong focus on actually implementing child protection activities, for example, to enhance access to education, to support mindset change in communities around the issue of child labor, but also advocacy towards government, towards private sector, are some of the things we do in the Work No Child's Business Alliance. And as I said, the Work No Child's Business Alliance was actually initiated initially by the Stop Child Labour Alliance, which includes HIVOS, ARISA, Kinderpostzegels, and some other organizations. And by means of scaling the efforts over which were there before 2020, UNICEF and Save the Children got involved in the current alliance. So that's very brief where we come from and what we do together. Next, indeed. Well, we work in 6 different countries, in West Africa, one in East Africa and Uganda, in the Middle East in Jordan, in Asia, in India, and in Vietnam. And in each of those countries, we focus on different sectors in which children work. And one common sector across the board is the informal and domestic sector, which is often forgotten, which is where maybe more girls work than boys. But those are some of the sectors that we work in. Next slide. As background, how we're then organized. So on the one hand, we have 6 country teams with different constellations of partners working in country. Those can be Save the Children and UNICEF themselves, and in many of the countries. Save the Children actually works in all the 6 countries, but also local or national organizations working in those countries, partnering directly with Stop Child Labour Alliance or being partners of Save the Children and UNICEF in country. So that's on the right side of this slide, the 6 country teams who really implement activities to enhance access to education, to address social norms, the things I've just been talking about. And on the left hand, there are different types of international working groups that are supporting the country. For example, in the project cycle management, such as meal finance and program managers are involved on the international level. We have colleagues who are busy with international lobbying and advocacy and communications. And I'm part of working groups more busy with linking and learning of what we learn across the Alliance. We have different ones, also working groups focusing on education, on gender, and on responsible business. Well, I will take you to the research working group of which I'm part. Well, this whole Alliance is then governed by different, by the Partnership Management Unit, which sits at HIVOS in the Netherlands. So there's a bit of background for your whole thought, how we're organized, which may help you to understand also the research recommendations better that Margit and her team will present later on. Next slide, please. So as I said, I'm part of the research working group, and for the Working with Child's Business Partnership, research is really a strategy to enhance the program quality and impact overall. And there is a global research working group that consists of members of the Stop Child Labour Alliance, of Save the Children, and of UNICEF that promote doing research in the Alliance and that evaluate any research proposals that come from within the Alliance. That can be from countries, from partners in countries, it can be from global working groups, any research proposal. And the original approach was that there was one global research budget open for anyone to use, not dedicated to any country or any particular subject in the beginning. And to manage the applications for ourselves a little bit, we said we have 2 application rounds a year in which anyone interested can apply according to a fixed template for applications. But we had some challenges with that approach, and that's how we got in touch with the Wageningen team. One of the challenges was, for example, the lack of oversight. What is actually relevant? Which research needs do we really need to finance? Just where Margit talked about this whole, we knew we wanted to be locally relevant, but we didn't know what the questions were. So that was one of the key challenges we faced. And very practically, we're also receiving relatively few applications. And if we received applications, they were generally large and coming from our UNICEF and Save the Children country office partners mainly. So yeah, we thought, what can we do better? What's going wrong? That's how we got in touch with the team of Wageningen University. So that team is led by Margit van Wessel, who just introduced herself, but she worked together with her colleagues Rajeshwari, based in India, and Siri Leifering, based at that time in South Africa. I believe she's back in the Netherlands now. And they commissioned the research, which they will now present in further detail to you all.
Yes, thank you, Jan. Yeah, as Jan already mentioned, I wasn't alone in this project. In fact, most of the work was done by my brilliant colleagues, Siri Leifering and B. Rajeshwari, and they will also be joining this presentation shortly. I will be opening the presentation of the research, and they will join in as we move forward. So, as the title slide says, advancing research in the WNCB program, localization as a way forward, again underlines how localization is not a challenge for advancing research, but a starting point. And hopefully we'll be clarifying that as we move forward. And yeah, as we move to the next slide, we can start explaining that a little bit. The 2 questions of evidence-based working, supporting research, and taking care of the need for localization, that were, you know, the to two key elements in the terms of reference that we worked with, so to say. And as we moved forward, we developed insights that really brought out a certain type of connection, as I just said. So yeah, we really appreciate the research working group also for commissioning this research. And I'm also really glad that Jan today is going to talk about the way that the research working group and the different others involved have taken up the recommendations that we came up with and translated those into actions, which is in fact, I think, only possible by those directly involved. So we have basic recommendations, but in the end, Jan and his team really took the effort of starting with that, and I think that also really will clarify the meaning of our work today. We carried out this research independently, so all the questions that came up for us and the ways to approach that and how to handle challenges in the research, all of that was handled by us independently. All the data also handled confidentially so that people could speak openly about what their experiences and perspectives were, and hopefully that will help the program and others involved. There's also a report, a publicly available report. A link will be provided in the chat, I hope you'll have a look at it and enjoy that. And please get in touch with us if you want to know more. Next slide, please. So we handled two basic research questions. The first is a bit long and complicated, but what we basically wanted to find out was, why do organizations in the program relate to research the way they do? Understanding that the research was picked up in some ways, but in quite a limited way was the impression. So we really wanted to understand, do organizations find research important? What are reasons why they are taking it up or not? And what are the explaining factors there? Is it about their internal conditions? Is it about the context of the country or the program? Is it the way collaboration in the WNCB program is set up? So we really had an open approach seeking to understand the role of research in different contexts. And then based on our understanding of those conditions then, of the reasons why organizations relate to research the way they do, we then had the second question to address, which is, how can the program help stimulate research from the basis of that understanding? So that was, that was the approach that we had. Next slide, please. We had 3 countries to work with. We sought a variety of conditions and also sectors that the program was working in, and we thought that would be good to have a full scope of different factors that might come in, and also come to a form of comparative analysis. And we had as the starting point that we really need to build on what was already there. So we really made an effort to explore the literature that was relevant for this study, meaning what do we already know about the way that research is picked up in civil society collaborations? What are theories that we could use, and build on that and develop that further, because we also sensed that there was not an approach that could really work for many organizations in the development sector, civil society programs like the strategic partnerships, for example. So we did 58 interviews. Some were with actors in the Dutch context. Most of them were in the countries, including the country leads, the organization leading the programs in the countries, but also many partner organizations. Because of COVID, we had to do most of our interviewing online, and we did a bit of fieldwork in Jordan. That was that was great that they were able to receive us, and that helped a lot to get a clearer sense of what was going on. And again, my colleagues Sidi and Rajeswari have really done most of the work here, so credits really to them. Next slide, please. Yes, so and here we come to what is, I think, our most important conceptual contribution to the field, and that is a model that we developed called the CSO research ecosystem, as we call it. And this research ecosystem model puts organizations developing and carrying out programs in the countries and in the regions at the heart of how to approach advancing research, right? So here we have in the middle of this still empty slide, the organizations that whose research a program would want to stimulate, right? So our idea is that if you want to stimulate organizations doing research, you really have to look at what helps there, what makes them do research, or what barriers come in for them that stop them from doing research or that constrict research. So based on existing literature, but also our own findings, we came up with this idea that you have to put organizational drivers at the center. And that means motivations, capacities, and that includes not only skills and knowledge, but also resources available for doing research. For example, a staff member that's responsible for research, that's actually, has time to think about that. And then the perceived opportunities that organizations see. For example, how useful is it for our program to do research? How much do we need it? So look first of all at what drives research. So the organizational drivers. Then next slide, please. That set of organizational drivers is embedded in what we call the collaboration context. And this is then the program and the organizations involved in the program that have an important role establishing the conditions for organizations in the countries to do research. So that would be the kind of importance that is given to research in the program, the kind of strategic choices that are made. For example, how are research questions defined, what is important and what is deemed not important, are there communication structures involved, is there a lot of interaction or is it very difficult? So all kinds of practices and structures that co-define the conditions for research for the organizations at the center. And then finally, next slide, please. There is the macro context, and that is then the country context and regional context that shape the possibilities for research within the countries. Next slide, please. And that would be questions of civic space, also cultural factors. For example, it can be difficult to do research into certain topics or addressing certain populations. There may be safety and security issues. Because of COVID, it may be difficult or less difficult to do research. So also these conditions play a role in defining what's possible in terms of research and what to do about those things. So if you look at this model, then I think there's one key message that comes across, or that is supposed to come across from this, and that's really to be understood in comparison to what we see as common practices in this area. We often have the idea, having read the literature, our team that is, having read the literature and having seen what happens, is that if you look at stimulating research, there's often the idea that it's very much about technical capacities. If you want to stimulate research, you have to stimulate the capacity to do research in technical terms. So making sure that people know how to do research and that they understand the needs of your program, well, often defined in the global north in many situations, of course, not always, but the idea is that it's a deficit model. Those organizations in the global south, they have some weaknesses. They need to be strengthened, and that strengthening is in technical terms. Now, what we see here, on the contrary, is that there are many different angles from which to stimulate research. You can consider the motivations by which people work. You can consider what resources and specific capacities they need. You can make sure that they see and have available to them opportunities to do research. You can also relate to the opportunities that they in fact do see to make sure that the research that they can do and want to do then is relevant to them. You can address the way your collaboration is set up, the kind of space you give to local questions, the kind of communication structures you have that make sure or do not facilitate actual co-defining of priorities, for example. You can have certain supportive structures in place or not. So you can look into all kinds of issues and possibilities for stimulating research. Because as we then show in this model, stimulating research from an angle that takes seriously that research need to be locally owned, as programs also need to be locally owned. You can perceive it as an ecosystem where you can influence many different factors. And it would also be very important to look as an organization or as a program into what is the situation here for us, what can we stimulate, and why, to have a much more broad and open perspective that puts organizations in the countries at the center. Thank you. That's the model. And then we move on to Rajeshwari, who will talk a little bit about what kinds of questions then come up when you have this more locally oriented perspective. Please, Rajeshwari, go ahead.
Thank you, Margit. As Margit just pointed out, that there are many ways in which one can really look at how research can be stimulated. And one aspect that we really found interesting was to look at the types of knowledge questions, because we found organizations really prioritizing research which was based on the types of knowledge questions that they were studying or were really interested to deeply acquire. So these knowledge questions were really about expressing the knowledge needs of organizations. And we found that while there were diverse interests when it came to knowledge questions, but they were more or less, we categorized them into 5 categories based on the different types of questions that we received from 3 countries that we did research on. So one of the interesting aspects was really identifying the root causes of child labor. A lot of the organizations were really interested to understand what is it that really is the root cause of child labor in the area or in that local context in which they were really working. So for instance, is it poverty, is it education, or is it the social norms, for instance? So why do, for instance, children leave school and start working? So organizations really felt that while they had some understanding of these issues, but they would really like to do some in-depth inquiry into this. Also, they were interested, the next category that is to map the nature and scope of child labor in the program area. So for example, who are the beneficiaries and what are the patterns of child labor in the key sectors that they were working on? So a key purpose, therefore, for them was really to map the nature and scope. Also, organizations, for them, very important aspect was to develop advocacy strategies to influence policymakers. So again, you can see an example of that can be, what are the gaps, for instance, in implementing of laws relating to child labor, and how can organizations really address them? So they were asking these kind of questions, and these were very interesting when it came to trying to understand their advocacy goals and how they could really influence the policymaker. Another important dimension for organization was really to improve, their intention was to improve the program effectiveness, because obviously they were running the program and they wanted to know how effectively they could do it. So in relation to that, some of the questions that came up was that what are the gaps and real experiences? For example, children who were into bridge schooling, because once they experienced the child labor, they had to complete their schooling. So what are the gaps in this? In several countries, this bridge schooling or some aspect of bridge schooling was going on. So parallelly, many organizations in different countries asked the same question. So which was another interesting element to see that how the commonalities also emerged in these knowledge questions. And a very strong purpose in asking these knowledge questions was also in developing an adaptation of intervention. So for example, organizations are interested to learn how to best approach the families when they are not very forthcoming, they're reluctant because of multiple reasons. How to identify children with risk, for instance. So, these knowledge questions really raised mostly, they were important in terms of addressing the problem analysis for the organizations. And also, we believe that an in-depth understanding of these knowledge questions within collaborations really can help in stimulating research, which is based on local contexts and needs. This is what we found as far as the knowledge questions were concerned. I'm going to now hand you over to Siri, who will be further talking about the various principles and also the pathways and conversations related to it. Siri, over to you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Rajeshwari, and thank you, Margit, and also thank you to all of you being here today and allowing us to share our results. So I will be talking about the principles for advancing research through localization. So what both Margit and Rajeshwari have already shared is that there are lots of different ways to approach research, even in one strategic partnerships. So that shows that a one-size-fits-all approach really doesn't work. So we need to move away from this deficit or expert-driven model that Margit mentioned to more a facilitator's model that prioritizes localization of research to really make the research also meaningful in the context of a strategic partnership. So how to do this in practice? I think that's the million-dollar question here. How can actually strategic partnerships implement this? So for this, we defined, or our research proposes 5 key principles for advancing research through localization. And each of these pathways has a number, each of these principles has a number of pathways of change to take action. And some of which are more quick wins, as you will see, and some are more fundamental efforts that really need a transformative approach within the partnership. So I won't be able to go through all of these in detail, but if you want to read more, you can always look at the research report that was just shared in the chat, and we welcome any questions that you might have after our presentation. But just to start with the first one, and that is facilitating exchange and learning to build mutuality. So especially in partnerships that are implemented across multiple contexts, which strategic partnerships generally are, it's really important to learn from each other's experiences and weave patterns of similarities and differences to make also the program more effective. So doing research in both Jordan and in India, I heard many of the same concerns or questions coming up, such as what Rajeshwari already mentioned: what are the root causes of child labor, how to promote the benefit of education to keep children in school, and many others that came up in different parts of the program and with different partners, with all different answers to these. So a collective exploration of these questions to see how they connect to each other, and also to questions that may arise on a global level, can really help the program in building a shared research and learning agenda, and also exchange lessons learned from within the program, which can again benefit the program as a whole, both in terms of the actual implementation of the program, but also in advocacy efforts. So one way of doing this, so one pathway for change, so to say, is to create more space for South-South exchange and learning in the partnership, so that partners can really share their experiences, challenges that they may come across, and also questions, knowledge questions that they have, and the answers that they find along the way. So organizing learning or research workshops can be one way of doing this, but I'm really looking forward also to hearing more from the WNCB program on how they are doing this in practice. And the theory of change of a program can, in this regard, act here as a guiding tool for these discussions. So really validating these assumptions and looking at what do we actually understand with different parts of the theory of change, and how is that understood in different contexts, and really exchange that knowledge. So that is the first principle. So if you could move to the second one. Yes, so that's the embrace the diversity of organizations. So as you all know, in a strategic partnership, the organizations are highly diverse, ranging from multilateral and international organizations on the one hand to locally based NGOs and CBOs on the other, with everything in between. And also between those organizations, there is a lot of difference. So when it comes to engagement with research and the questions also they identify as relevant, these are also often very different. And this is something that also came up in this research with the WNCB program, is that it's sometimes difficult, or it can provide or be seen as challenging for the program in terms of coordination and harmonization of these research practices, because how do you design one framework for all these different partners and all these different partners' needs? But if you actually embrace this diversity, it can also bring about complementarity and new insights within the partnership when facilitated effectively. So it's really recognizing these different types of knowledge questions, but also different types of research, including both formal and also informal research methodologies. For example, collecting stories or testimonies and seeing them as relevant within the context of the program is one way of doing this, which can also provide opportunities for international advocacy efforts to bring in research from different levels of the program, to showing how one part of the advocacy strategies really plays out at different levels. Yes, if you could move to the third one. Yes, so addressing questions of power. So for those of you who are also involved in shifting the power community of practice of partos, this is of course a very familiar topic of discussion. But this is key in any strategic partnership, but also when it comes to research, because as you know, within strategic partnerships in general, funding is mostly channeled through Dutch-based or at least Northern-based organizations. So most of the decisions about the partnership, including decisions about research, are often made in the global North in general. So to enable localization of research, it's really important to also set up specific inclusive governance mechanisms that really include Southern-based organizations as well, and their ideas and perspectives on research. So this is really crucial to stimulate local leadership and also ownership of the research agenda to really make sure, oh, I see some sign of approval, that's good, to really make sure that that the research agenda of a partnership also includes the perspectives of the Global South. And I know that the WNCB program has really worked on this in their partnership, and I believe they will share how they have done this, so that will be really interesting to learn. Yes, the next one, please. Yes, so one of the core principles of localization is to reinforce rather than replace local capacities. So it starts with identifying the capacities that are already there. And as Margit mentioned before, these are not just technical capacities that can be viewed from this deficit approach of partners lacking capacities, but it's really building on what partners already do when it comes to research and what they're good at. And also listening to partners' needs about what they need when it comes to capacity building. So not just identifying general research capacities, but also listening to specific capacities that they would like to develop further. So for example, for my research in also both Jordan and Uganda, one of the things that was mentioned is that it's really important not to just know how research works, but also how evidence from research can be used in policy making and also strategic policy and advocacy efforts. So building this advocacy capacity, for instance, was one need that was really defined by the in-country partners as something that was crucial within the partnership, something that wasn't maybe as yet implemented before that. So really building on what is already there, and also co-developing an effective knowledge management system that allows for different forms of research to be included. So not only the formalized academic types of research, but also making way and making space for more informal approaches, as I mentioned before, like these stories and testimonials. How can we build and co-create a knowledge system within a partnership that all the partners can use to their advantage? Yes, then the final one, which is, I think, the most obvious one, because research costs time and money. Really looking at those funding mechanisms that can stimulate research also on a local level becomes really important. So for many partners, and I think many in-country partners will recognize this, research is often something that comes on top of all the responsibilities and all the program expectations that are already implemented within the program. And there is often not one person dedicated to research within an organization. So two things can be really helpful here. Could be providing core funding to organizations to really build that institutional capacity when it comes to research. so build like a more longer term capacity within organization. But on the other hand, you also need more flexible funding, because research, as we all know, cannot be defined only beforehand. But if you really want to localize research and build it on locally defined knowledge questions, these also come up during the implementation of the partnership. So there needs to be some kind of flexible funding to allow for these questions to emerge and to be further explored. So just to conclude, so these are the 5 pathways for change. But again, these should not be seen as a blueprint that you can just implement in your partnership directly. It's more like a guideline that helps you to think about these questions. And it's a guideline to help you on this journey that partners have to go on together, and creating space for an open and reflexive discussion. And that's why, maybe you can move to the next slide. Yes, so that's why we also formulated some conversation starters. You can find these, I won't go in through these in detail now, but you can find these in the report, and that can help partners within a strategic partnership to really facilitate these discussions based on the different elements of the research ecosystem, as explained by Margit. And this really can build connections between different partners, which will not only strengthen, at least that is our resolve, not only strengthen research engagement, but more general engagement and commitment in the partnership, if this is done well. So it's really an ongoing conversation about how to localize, about how to address local needs of knowledge and research. And so maybe you can move. So these are the questions based on the organizational drivers. We have formulated questions that can help making the collaboration context more conducive to partnering. And the final one is also how to navigate and mitigate the macro factors that come into the research ecosystem. So we really hope that these tools and these questions would inspire all of you to start thinking about this within your partnerships, and to start these conversations to really implement this. And we welcome any questions that you may have about this, either during this session or at a later stage. And yes, thank you all for listening to us.
Wow. Thank you very much, Margit, Rajeshwari, and Siri, for these very thought-provoking presentations about, first of all, the research ecosystem model, the knowledge questions approach, and the facilitator model with the pathways for change. It looks very comprehensive. So now we have some time for a Q&A session. Perhaps I can ask everybody to digest a little bit what you have heard, think about it, reflect on it, and write something down in the chat. It can be a question, it can be a thought, it can be a feeling, it can be anything. So write something down in the chat, and feel free to take a minute to do so. Let me give you some time. So think about it, what you've heard. You can move on, Romy, to the next slide. So I see Anushka is sharing participative grant making, but then for research. Is it something similar? Perhaps a question to the team. Is it some participatory grant making, but then for research? Siri?
Sorry, I was looking at all the questions and comments in the chat, which were already interesting. So I think, but please, Margit and Rajeshwari, also add to this. I think this is one way, this could be one way of implementing some of the principles within the partnership. So as I understand it, participative grant making is also that you involve the partners in the decision about who gets funding to do research within the partnership. So it's a collective decision made between the partners. And I think this is one interesting way of implementing some of the principles. And I was wondering if Anushka has a specific example from this or experience in doing this that she would like to share.
If you feel comfortable, Anushka.
Well, we are not working on participative research making, but at the same time, what we in our strategic partnership do try to do is have the decision to do research or to have research conducted, have that decision made by our partners themselves. So it's not something that we do. It's something that we promote within the budgets, for example, to have done, or to that they can do it, and they decide themselves what they do, and then how that fits into the general theory of change. So the decision for kind of like the budget is general, but the decision for doing these researches is it's not generally made, but it's generally discussed, and it's up to our partners to choose what they want to do and how they want to do it.
If I can just link up with that, I think what we are proposing here in this model is indeed very similar, in the sense that you look to motivations, capacities, opportunities that the organizations themselves are seeking, and as the name facilitator model also connotes, you try to facilitate the embracement of research as integral to your program. So it's supporting the growth of research capacity and action, indeed, by creating the possibilities and by connecting.
Yeah, and I was just thinking of the participative grant making model, just because it goes a step further, right? It's not where we are yet, but it does go deeper into talking together about what's important to do and how to do this, and to really connect together.
Thanks, Anushka, and thanks for the reply as well. I see many things happening in the chat, and I also see a hand up of Anwar. Anwar, you also had a question, if I'm correct, earlier.
Yeah.
Please take the floor.
So no, I just would like to add two things. One is like a reflection. The question was more around the organizational structure, the environment, the role of leadership. For example, like from a localization perspective, when I was working in Uganda, our colleagues, the program colleagues, they were having a tough time for getting an MOU with Makerere University. So there were kind of challenges, obstacles within the program team. Whereas we had two different MOUs with the Western universities, those were quick, and then they were, like not having any kind of challenge. So it was quite, like in between discussion, negotiation within the office of the organization. But finally, after some time, we had a breakthrough, and we had a long-term strategic MOU with Makerere University. Now, what was the modalities? For example, we had that strategic open-ended MOU, not for a particular research, but for long-term multiple research. So basically what we said, like if we have 3-4 evaluation baselines, so we shared our priorities, like what are our priorities for this year or for next year. And then we were looking for Makerere University. We had a MOU with one particular faculty, but then they could engage other departments or faculties as well. And the grant making or for the potential bidding, that was an area like where we said like we will have their role as and when for existing grants or existing projects, the roles were decided or the budgets were decided, but the future one, then it was more what is being suggested from them, which kind of resources and areas, and engagement of local partners. Like being an INGO, it was Plan International, but being an INGO, we had a different, infrastructure, but we played the crucial role of local CSO partners in Makerere University, like combining it. And since most of our projects were being supported by the Western plans offices, so there the Western academic partnerships, like for example, partnership with Norway's universities or UK's universities, those are also being linked with the Makerere University. So at least the North-South academic partnership is also established, because they were our program colleagues, they were having question on credibility of Makerere University. They were not questioning the quality of the Western university, but the local university. So like it was a bit complex model which we evolved, and it is working. And the good thing was the role played by the monitoring and evaluation team. They took more ownership than the program team. So that was kind of a shift in this whole success of this one. So like this model which was being presented, it was good and it's more effective. So that's what I was just wanted to contribute and complement.
Thank you very much, Anwar. Also looking at our guest speakers, if there are any reactions.
I just want to say thank you, Anwar, for really, saying that you found it useful, our model. From what I really understand and what Anwar really said about, and something that we've also been talking about in our own report, has been that, there are diverse way to do things. Like, you cannot have a fixed method through which you can, talk about research, and also in terms of being flexible about what organizations really needs are and what they want to do. That is one of the dimensions that, these two things, diversity and flexibility, giving certain options of being able to showcase their research or the kind of work that they've done. Maybe not just in terms of a report or proper paper, but something else, like for what Siri was also talking about, like in the model of storytelling or testimonials or something of that kind. So those are flexible methods of showing. So that kind of flexibility allows organizations to explore different ways of doing things.
I'd like to just add briefly to what Jeshwari is saying here. If you look at our model, you show that there are many entry points from which to stimulate research. And what we've done is we've taken the different elements of the model and we have identified what we call pathways of change that you can take up. And they are also all in the report, different things that you can take up as actions addressing different elements in the model and having conversations between each other on these different pathways through the conversation starter. So that's how it's connected. And the 5 principles are more like overarching that really also translate into the different pathways. So that's how the connection is. But I think the pathways, so every principle has a number of pathways that you can take up through conversation starters. I think that is a very practical a tool, you could say, in our report. So I really would, encourage people to explore these pathways.
Thank you for sharing, Margit, and very lively conversation. Let's take a few more minutes for the Q&As. I see some interesting things being shared in the chat. Perhaps I can share a few. One is more or less part of the same framing. Marije Nederveen is saying, yes, sometimes I feel in response to Manish and Saskia, we are trying to make ourselves and other NGOs into research institutes, instead of asking ourselves the relevance of the research to a program, instead of the research becoming an aim in itself. Then Farun Sharma is saying, at the same time, community level disclosure of research results and how research results could be converted into actions. Seen many research are unused due to the absence of such a mechanism in place. Any thoughts from the presenters, perhaps, on these statements and thoughts shared by the participants?
Yeah, I would like to respond maybe to the comment made by Marije Nederveen, also about why you do research. And research has become sort of a goal in itself, and showing or proving as an NGO that you do good research, instead of asking yourself the question, what is the basis of that research? Why do we actually want to know this? And I think that is the principle, that is the core principle of what we were trying to do here, is to turn that upside down and really to start with the need and the locally asked knowledge questions of why we want to research. Because if you do that, then you really build on the motivations of partners to do research, instead of it becoming a chore on top of program activities that needs to be carried out. It is really to stimulate organizations to make their work more effective and to also build their knowledge on a certain topic that they find relevant. So I think that is actually kind of the point of the whole question around localization of research, is that you address this question within a partnership. So I just wanted to add to that.
Just to connect with Siri here, and also what Varun is saying about research at community level, being more closely to local realities and also closer to action. What was really an eye-opener for us was how interested organizations in the countries were in learning more. They were having all of these knowledge questions without much opportunity they found to actually explore these. So they had little chance through resources and through staff and time to actually explore the questions that they did face to actually make their program effective in their view. So stimulating the strengths already there and the insights based on a very very informed and lived understanding of local context. I think in many situations you have a kind of gold mine there that's left unattended. So exploring these possibilities emerging through knowledge questions that people already have, and translating these into research questions and exploring their wider relevance and connecting south to south also. When you indeed find that, as we found, that many questions across contexts have some similarity and feed into each other, and can then also in turn feed into global level programming and advocacy, for example, rather than at global level seeking advocacy, seeking evidence of a type you already think you understand for goals you already have. Instead of that, exploring also what what emerges from the local level by providing the opportunities for that.
Thank you very much, Margit. So perhaps a final question from my side, and then we need to go on and take a few moments for a break. So a very comprehensive model, or actually models, and it makes very clear on how potentially practitioners, development professionals could advance research through localization. At the same time, looking at the organizational drivers, the collaboration context, the macro context with the pathways of change. So where do you start? Where do you start? Me being a development professional, wanting to do research, where do I start? By making use of this model. Could you give us a piece of advice?
Well, that's what Jan's going to talk about after the break, right? They've taken up this challenge that you just posed. How about that, Jan? Is that a good idea?
Jan, are you ready to answer that question after the break?
Yeah, I can answer that question and go how we did it and what we learned from it. And I don't think we have the perfect answer to your question, but it can at least share how we approached it and what we learned from that approach, and what challenges and limitations our approach has.
Amazing.
So thanks for that bridge, Alexander.
Amazing, amazing. So that's that will happen after the break, and after the break we will also have a lively panel discussion after the presentation of Jan, with a diverse group of international development professionals talking about their experiences from different countries on how this model has been implemented and how the research experiences have been experienced. So for now, let's take a few moments break. Let's take 4 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes. So we will be back at in 5 minutes. So we start again in 5 minutes, wherever you might be. So in, let's say 2:10 Central European Time, 5 minutes. Okay, we will be starting again in 1 more minute. Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome back. Please, if possible, turn on your camera. If possible, turn on your camera and make yourself visible. Curious to see all those faces behind the names. If you feel comfortable, if you can, if you want, of course, don't feel pressured. We're starting again with our second round of today's session about advancing research through localization. Welcome, welcome. Okay, I see many people are back again, coming back again. Welcome. Please turn on your camera if that's possible, if you feel comfortable. Okay, so let's start. For the next, let's say 40-45 minutes, we have a very exciting presentation to be conducted by Jan Apperloo from Save the Children, who's going to share his experiences about how the research models have been used by the Alliance, WNCB Alliance, if I'm correct. And then we're going to have a very interesting panel discussion with many diverse international guest speakers. So be prepared and please feel free to include your thoughts, ideas, questions in the chat. Okay, Jan, take it away.
Thanks. And let me start with, I think the first question raised in the chat was from Renee about how do we then prioritize research when there's so many research questions all around, which is a great learning for us as an alliance, that there are actually so many research questions and also so much similarity across context that is, as Margit is called, maybe a gold mine to work on, and really an opportunity and added value of collaboration among so many partners and across so many contexts. But yeah, as Alexander just raised, where to start. So I will share where we started as the Global Research Working Group, and then end with well, the challenges and limitations of where we started, but also our successes, of course. After which we move to a panel with colleagues in country to move more to how this discussion at research then happen at country level. Next slide, please. So Siri just presented the 5 principles for localizing research, and we took those 5 principles really at the starting point of changing our ways of working around research. So shortly go through each of the 5 principles again and tell what did we do, how did we change our ways of working as at the global level within the research as a research working group. So next one, please. First of all, of course, embracing the diversity of organizations. So we have international partners within WNCB, such as UNICEF, Save the Children, various local organizations, then national offices of international organizations. To address this diversity, we started to map emerging research ideas with the help of country research focal points. Previously, we didn't have those research focal points in each country, but we said, well, maybe we can have someone with interest and experience in research in each country who can be our eyes and ears to hear what research questions are actually emerging in each of the countries. We did away also with the template for applications and with the deadlines for by this and this date, you have to submit your research proposal. Instead, we had a very flexible guidelines for what you may consider if you want to develop a research proposal. So that are some of the examples how we try to give more space for a diverse crowd of applications of research plans to emerge and then to get funded. Next slide, please. Through the research focal points, we started to identify what the research questions there actually are. That's the main approach we have followed to really say, well, we have research funds. What shall we do with those funds? How can we create an open conversation about that? And the model, including the conversation starters, have really helped also to start a conversation with the research focal points about that. There are a few things which are outside the scope of our direct work as research working group. I think what we can do more is still working on the mindset around what's relevant for advocacy. As Rajeswari shared, quite a number of partners shared. They want to do research to inform their advocacy, but some others maybe have more of a implementing mindset and are not really there and thinking in such a way about research. Another thing where I think we can still do better is the co-creation of knowledge management systems. So what knowledge is actually out there, what things are partners working at which moment, how do we keep each other informed? We have different sharing and learning meetings within the Alliance, but really a good system that helps to document what we learned across the board is still something that we need to work more on, we feel. Next slide. So with our research focal points, we conducted a research mapping, and that research mapping, we have now a list of research questions in each of the countries. For Uganda, for Jordan, and for India. The work of the Wageningen University Research team was really helpful with that, but now we have expanded that list also with the other countries in which we work. So it kind of gives an overview of what categories of questions come up a lot across the board. Then that's how we facilitate exchange. Like I just said, it's not only about ensuring that we have good systems, it's also that we have a good culture of linking and learning within the Alliance. Within our Alliance, we have a linking and learning officer, and he is really working on ensuring that we advance the linking and learning environment in our Alliance. I know his name is Jacques, he's also in the call. He can maybe share more experiences of his role in that later on. Most important, address questions of power, and I think here we have made some steps, but they're also still stuck in some of the power relations we have in the consortium. So research budget was first one global pool for all countries to apply for and for any global partners. This is now shifted and this budget has been cut up, and there is budget available in each country. So the emphasis is also shifted from a very stringent proposal or template for proposals to a much more checklist to make it much less complicated to apply for research funds. As a working group, we do not want to judge any research proposals ourselves anymore. We want to have a research focal point on board, and also say if you work on a research proposal, then that work on that research proposal is something that can already be funded, even if the research proposal itself may not end to be prioritized in the end. So those are some of the things we did as a research working group to address questions around power. And the last one, diversify research funding mechanisms. So as I said, the cost of research can be part, and without templates, it becomes much easier to fund even smaller and larger research proposals. And actually, we're seeing that in practice, where last year, I think the smallest research proposal was quite a large grant of around 40,000 euros. Now we have much smaller research grants coming in from, say, 10 to 15,000 euros as well. So we see that by giving more control to countries to decide the research priorities themselves and the less formal procedures, we see already smaller types of research questions and proposals emerge in the Alliance. Well, the next slide, please. This is what we have done with the recommendations from Margit and her research team. Of course, there is much more we can do. I still feel with these research recommendations, especially as an Alliance as a whole. What I personally find really challenging is how to support a conversation to create really equal and adaptive playing field for all partners in country to ensure that the funding of emerging research applications. What we see in practice is that now that the research funds have been allocated to countries, that the power dynamics are shifting to countries, and maybe we do not have, not yet all partners have equal access to the research funds yet, or are aware of that they can have access to a research fund, or have really no feel on how priorities are set in country level. I'm therefore also very happy that we have various colleagues from our different countries available here. Also, some of them participated in this research who can share more of their experience at country level. How do you create this equal playing field of setting research priorities and decide which research types and questions get funding is addressed at country level, and move away from only kind of the north-south dimensions in this to take this a step further. So thanks. These are some of the examples of what we have done, and feel free to ask me if you'd like to know more what can be relevant for your partnership. Over to you, Alexander.
Thank you very much, Jan. So if you have any questions to Jan, feel free to ask them in the chat, otherwise to contact him later. Thank you, Jan, for sharing how you have operationalized basically this model, your experience, the experience of your alliance, your partners, and very interesting to hear. And let me see if we have any questions in the chats. If not, then feel free to ask them on a later moment in time. We still have a panel discussion to take place. So let's give it a few more seconds, and otherwise we will continue to our Menti. Perhaps in the meantime, Romy, you can already go to oh no, perhaps first we're going to introduce the different panel speakers before we go to Menti. If you can continue with the next slide, please. Yes, so you see here many names, not all the faces, at least not their real faces. We have a group of panelists who are going to debate about certain questions today. So we have from Uganda. I'm not quite sure whether everyone is present, so let's see. I'm going to share a name, and if you can say hi and who you are and where you're from, very briefly, that would be great. Anna, are you with us? The Director of Programs from Nascent Research and Development Organization.
Yes, I am here. Hi, everyone. I am very happy to be here this afternoon.
Great, thank you very much. Mohamed Alhani. Mohamed from Jordan, are you with us?
I don't see Mohamed in the participant list, but I know his other colleagues from Jordan
okay.
are around, or were around before at least.
Okay, so let's continue with the next on the list. Is Manish Singh from India.
Hi everyone, I'm here and nice to meet you virtually, and thanks for this wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Great. Welcome, Manish. Juliet.
Juliet and Dillis, both from Uganda. They are unlikely to participate. They are having another competing assignment this afternoon. Apologies on their behalf.
No worries, but thank you very much. Then we have Nada Ibrahim.
Hi everyone, and I'm happy to see all of them.
Great, hi. Then we have Farun.
Hello, good morning everybody, and for them, good evening, morning, afternoon, and evening for everybody. I'm here. Yeah. Catch you up later.
Then we have, let's see, Dillis.
Dillis is unable to participate.
Okay. And then the last one is, oh, my screen. Halim.
Hi, everybody.
Yes.
I'm very happy to see you and to be in this panel discussion.
Welcome. Okay, so welcome everybody. These are our Panelists of today. We're going to share a few statements with panelists, and we hope for a vibrant discussion to learn more from their experiences, but also if you are willing, please feel free to participate in this discussion. Let's quickly go to our Mentimeter. So if you can already go to, let me share it in the chat, Menti, and then in the meantime, Romy is going to share with us the Menti. So if you can go to menti.com and enter the code 62840494. Menti.com and then the code 62840494. You can do it on your laptop, you can do it on your phone. It's a very nice way in order to engage in some interaction and also to learn more about your experiences related to the statements that we're going to share. Okay. So menti.com and then the code is put in the chat. And then my colleague is going to put on the Menti screen. You can also find the code over there in view. Otherwise, let's see if I can share my screen. There it is. Thanks, Romy. If you can click again on present, then it should work now. I see the first answers are coming in. So this is the first statement that the panelists are going to talk about. And the question is, the statement is, research is not important for our work. Our organization focuses on implementing projects to address the problem of child labor. So this is specifically the statement focused on child labor, but think about it more generally. Research is not important for our work. Our organization focuses on implementing projects. So to what extent is that true? If you can please go to menti.com and enter the code 62840494. You can do it on your phone or your laptop. Okay, many people are strongly disagreeing. Many votes are coming in. Great. If you are not able to enter Menti, then please feel free to enter your answer in the chat, whether you strongly agree with this statement or strongly disagree. So last time, research is not important for our work. Our organization focuses on implementing projects to address whatever problem you're working on as an organization. Okay, perhaps we can go to some of the panelists. Who is very much eager to say something about this statement? Who can I give the word? Please take the floor.
Yeah, this is Varun from India, and I can initiate this.
Please, first Varun, and then
right now the trends are in the direction of strongly disagree, but I am completely agree with this because we have an experience and where our state government come with a policy because of a research organized conducted by some international agency. So many times many issues are invisible. When a researcher came and do the research, it's come in front of policymakers. So research are important for not our work, but also for change the various set norms which is exist in the community. So although within I'm talking about there are some trends moving towards strongly agree. So anybody else? Yeah, we can.
Yeah. Hi, may I come in?
Please do.
Yeah. I'm Manish Singh. I work for an organization called Manjari in India. As we discussed a lot on localizing, research. So I would just like to present my view with a very strong, agreement that research is very important for our work. In 2005, ARISA conducted a study titled Bhutpura Ground Zero. So this study only highlighted that there's a huge incidence of child labor in supply chain of natural stone. And because of that, the whole initiative called Manjari, to which I represent, is there in the ground. So this is how good research work actually capacitate or motivate local actions, or to give them a shape to address the issue. So research is very important, and provided that we have enough access to those resources and we have enough insight to convert that into action. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I also see the hand of Anna.
Thank you so much, Alexander. I work with an organization which is called Nascent Research and Development Organization. And so even from the name of my organization, it is certainly obvious that research is key for our work. We believe in evidence-based programming, and so all our programs are informed by evidence. Now, ordinarily what normally happens as programmers, when we are writing proposals, we usually are depending on thin evidence because it is a process that we want to complete and have this grant get on rolling. But so our conceptualization is usually informed by less evidence at the time. But once a program now starts, it is an opportunity for us to even explore more what is working, what is not working, and what we can do better. And actually right now, more urgent for us to even undertake research, because COVID has taught us many things. It came with very many challenges, but also with COVID, we learned that there are many other possibilities. We got new innovations. However, what I also want to note on this statement is usually research tends to be subsumed. Once implementations have started, research tends to be and the focus goes into, we want to achieve because we have targets and want to achieve the targets. However, it is a very key component which needs to be given a very important space for us to continue learning as
Yes.
What is your experience?
Yeah. Actually, I just want to add one thing, because from our point as a local organization, sometimes we believe that there is importance of doing such kind of this research, because that's make us, because we are from the local community and we are really retouching all the time the beneficiaries, and we are interactive with the family. So it is easy for us to touching the impact of the implementation of the project, and how it is effective for the long term on the society. So we can sometimes tracking all the the success of implementation and the needs of the let's say the beneficiaries, and that actually help us in a long term to understanding the best project shouldn't be implemented in our society.
Yes, and what role does research has within your important work?
The main role actually is maybe let's say showing what kind of the project that the child labor needed in the society, what types of the protection concern that we should focusing during implementation of the project. So I think that give us what the best project should implemented, and what kind of result should be taking in our considerations when we start doing the research and focusing on it.
Thank you, Hanin. Thank you. I see also Amit sharing something in the chat. Perhaps I can give Amit also some time to explain. I work in an organization called Pradhan, and we do believe that without research on the intervention, generating evidence, it is difficult to design implementation efficiently, hence influencing policy. So it has to go hand in hand. Amit, could you please clarify? If you feel comfortable, and if you can, of course. Nope. Okay, then let's continue. Jacques Schilling is saying research results for accountability versus research for program improvement. Could you please clarify, Jacques?
Yeah, I am Jacques Schillings. I work at the WNCB program as the Linking and Learning Coordinator. And I think we need to make distinctions between what different purposes research can have, especially when we talk about localized research. There is a tendency to please donors and to generate evidence in order to demonstrate that the donors are correct in funding certain programs in developing countries' contexts. But basically the emphasis should lie on the generation of evidence for program improvements, so that the local ownership will also be increased and have opportunity for what's called adaptive management, so that the generation of evidence is not it's mainly used for as lessons learned and to translate those findings of the research into actual actionable activities that improve the effectiveness and impact. So it links up with also what Jan wrote above in the chat box. To increase impact is this challenge that we want to meet through research, especially localized research. So that's, yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Any responses to that? Otherwise, we will continue to our next statement. We still have one more statement to go, looking also at time. Nope. Okay, then let's continue to our second statement. And please go to Menti again, menti.com, and use the code 6284-0494. You can do it on your laptop or on your phone. And if you are not making use of Menti, or if you're not able to, totally fine. Then you can also put your answer in the chat, whether you strongly agree or disagree with the following statement. Our organization has the flexibility and decision-making power to finance the research needs that emerge from my program implementation and translate research results in programmatic improvements. So the question is specifically focused on the WNCB program, but think about your own program or partnership. Our organization has the flexibility and decision-making power to finance research needs that emerge from my program implementation and translate research results in pragmatic improvements. People tend to slightly agree, slightly disagree. I think the answers are somewhere in the middle. More questions are coming in. You can also put your answer in the chat, whether you strongly agree or disagree, or somewhere in between. I'm curious for the panelists from the WNCB program. Do you strongly agree or disagree? So who is strongly disagreeing? Can I give you the word? Who is strongly disagreeing? Or to an extent disagreeing? One of our panelists. Yes? Could you please state your name and your organization, and then yeah, share your thoughts, please? Thanks.
This is Varun. I'm from India, and basically why this in middle, because we have a different kind of organizations. There are organizations, they are largely into the research. There are an organization, they are the implementing NGOs, and as you know, research itself a very resource intensive exercise. So the question is talking about two aspects. One is organizational decision making to enter into the research, and second is able to provide resources for research. So basically that's why people are in between. Many small organizations, based on our experience to working with more than 300 small and grassroots organizations, they are willing to do some kind of research to improve their own program quality, but they didn't have capacity to do that. And at the same time, if you hire a researcher, quality research is very expensive always. So it's always a dilemma for a small and a grassroots organization, how they can work on it. And that's why one of the key role our organization is playing in our state is to build the capacity of grassroots people to at least start some kind of research work. So that's why our largely answer lies in between. Yeah, anybody else, please.
Yeah, hi, I'm Manish from Manjari Sansthan, India, WNCB partner. What Varun said is totally understandable. As presented in the previous presentation, which also says that making research from expert-driven to facilitator mode. So that is somewhere I see a hope in this statement. One that our commitment for a cause always pushes us to understand the whole change process or the whole issue in a very logical way, and for that we always need a research besides serving the purpose of policy advocacy or evidence creation. For our own improvement quality of programs, we need it. However, that the kind of academic bent of researches, that most of the time is a dilemma, that because developing those type of capacity in a grassroots organization is always a challenge. So what are our ways to facilitate a shift in research from expert driven to a facilitator driven, that a little workable models of conducting researches, which is scientifically also valid to the extent possible, and handy to be performed by local organizations. So that is another question which I see in this whole statement, which we all need to think, and that is very well presented in the first presentation. Sorry, I forgot the name who presented it, but this is where as a grassroots organization, I always have this situation. But again, we have there's no disagreement that research is not important. There's no disagreement that all local organizations must do research, must take up research to further improve their work. The question is how to bring in capacities or making it handy for grassroots workers. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Perhaps Anna, you have your hand up. Do you agree as well?
Okay, thank you so much. I was also in the middle because for me, I see this has three aspects. One is being able to make a decision and identify research needs. And then the other one is on financing those research needs. And then the third one is translating the results into programming improvement. And so for me, even drawing from the experience of Work No Child's business is that even as a country program, as different partners, we have the capacity, the flexibility, to be able to identify the different research needs. But when it comes to the power to finance those needs, then it becomes a different story. Jan has just explained how the funding dynamics in the research space have changed. And I remember very well during COVID season in Uganda, we had proposed to do a study on the gendered implications of COVID and how that affected the well-being of the children in the Karamoja region where we are working. Because, I mean, COVID was a new thing, and we wanted to see how it has affected children, their socio-economic well-being, to be able to then see how we can reprogram when the opportunity arises. But the funding was not there for us because of different reasons. And for us as a country, this was an important aspect because COVID was a new thing to us. And for Uganda, more specifically, COVID affected children in very unique and different ways because schools were closed for close to 2 years. And so the impact was so severe. And we're beginning to see this actually right now with the surge in cases of teenage pregnancy. So, I mean, we had a need and we wanted to do this, and we knew the direction we were taking, but we didn't have the power to make that kind of decision and say, let us finance this. And of course, I think now we are taking a right decision, a right direction, even from the changes that Jan has talked about arriving from the research. Yes, so in the past, it was a bit challenging, but I think now, even moving forward, even with the new, with the principles which our colleagues have just shared, I think the power to even finance some of the research needs might become a bit easier for us. Within Uganda, for example, if we have a research need, then it goes to the consortium, and we discuss and agree on whether this is a research need that is relevant for all of us as partners. And I think now it is much easier for us to even be able to agree, because at the moment, if time will allow later, I'm going to talk about our study on teenage pregnancy, which we are going to do in Uganda as a consortium. Yes, so I was in the middle, Alexander, thank you.
Thank you very much, Henna, for this comprehensive explanation. I see a question from Rainier coming in. Do you always need to involve research agencies? Most NGOs also have highly educated staff, including PhDs, who know how to do research. When do you decide to involve a research institution? Who wants to take up that question?
Yeah, I just, there is a range of organizations actually, and especially when we are talking about grassroots organizations, they didn't have, you know, that much qualified staff. And number two, even staff is qualified, research itself required a separate kind of, you know, skills to, you know, perform that. Because I consider research is a very specialized thing. And if you used that research as a evidence, and this research is not conducted as per the certain processes and norms, it could make blunder while you are going to present with some government agency or something like that. Those are decision makers. So yes, at least whatever my experience in India, our grassroots agencies are lacking this capacity. Result of that, they need to involve somebody who is expert into it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing. Anna, would you also like to respond to that question from Rainier?
Yes, I just wanted to add a little bit. Under what circumstances would we, for instance, need to hire a research organization? For me, my organization as Nascent Research Development Organization, we do research, but also we implement programs, and we have expertise amongst ourselves. We are able to carry out a number of studies. Actually, the question was asking, I am a PhD student actually in the Netherlands, and so I am very comfortable in doing a number of researches. However, there are instances where where first of all, as a consortium, you are all time constrained. And I think one of the challenges I think I have realized within Work Nurture's Business Consortium is the time for research is very limited because the focus is somewhere else. We want to achieve ETC. But also there are instances where you want we want like specialized skills. For instance, at the moment, we have been doing gender analysis. And so it may be possible that within amongst a consortium, you realize that there is no one who is available to be able to do this kind of gender analysis for you. And so you might need external expertise. But most of the times, we really look within ourselves. In Uganda, we are fortunate that within the consortium, we as NASCENT provide that role as a research organization, but also an implementing agency. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, who else? Somebody from the panelists wants to respond to the statements, perhaps?
Maybe I can chip in, Alexander.
I saw Haneen wants to say something, then I give you the word. Yeah. Haneen?
Yes, my colleague Nada will...
Please, Nada.
Yes.
Yeah?
Actually, I want to share that we are a local CBOs, so we don't have the source of finance for this type of research. But in the future, we will encourage our government in partnership with university to go forward on this research and provide us what we are needed for capacity building to achieve this type of research. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So you're pushing for more financial investment in research opportunities with your government. I think that's also a very important approach to take, and good luck with that. Jan, you also wanted to respond to something?
There was also a question about this statement also asked about the flexibility in decision-making process.
Yeah.
And now, for example, I know Haneen works as child protection officer, and maybe there are in her work with children, there are different issues that are not going so well and raise questions. I was wondering, and maybe Anna can also respond to that, how much space is there to bring this research question you may have to the attention, and then to ensure that it gets prioritized and even funded? How do you do that in practice? I don't know. Anna.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jan. Right now in Uganda, because of the flexible space that we have, I'm the research focal person for Uganda, and because of the flexible space now within the research working group, we are able to discuss as a consortium and be able to agree on our research that affects all of us. For instance, right now in Uganda, one of the very serious issues that we are battling with is the issue of teenage pregnancy. Like I have said, it is an emotive issue. The government is doing a lot around it. We actually also, as a consortium, had started to support the government because for the first time in Uganda, we now have guidelines which allow girls who have become pregnant to continue with schooling. And so we started supporting the process of disseminating the guidelines to the communities. But along the way, we had questions. And that is actually why we agreed as a consortium. We had questions. Does every girl actually want to go back to a formal school? We are working in a context where most of these girls are even married. Do they want to go to a formal school, or they would want something else, like maybe vocational skilling? Most of them also experience sexual abuse, and that is actually what came through. Now, for such a girl who has experienced sexual abuse and now that they are pregnant, do we just tell her go back to school? Is she mentally ready and psychologically ready to be able to go back to school? And so we said, look, no, we need to first sit down and understand the experiences and know what these girls would want to do, what they are able to do, and then we can support them. So for us, it is an issue of consensus, and that's how we agree on a research area, but also it is an issue of commonality. It is an issue which is grossly affecting our program as a country. And that is how we have been able to move. Thank you.
So an issue of consensus and commonality. Thank you very much, Anna, for providing that answer. And let's a final question I see from Gina, and then we will continue to our final few minutes of today. Gina?
Yes, thank you. My name is Gina Swart. I work for ARISA, and I also work in the research working group of the WNCB program. So I've been part of this collaboration with Wageningen University. And I wanted to react to what Haroon was saying, that you need experts, especially if you want to use the research for lobby. So then you really need to make sure that you've done your job right and you've got your evidence right. I agree with that. At the same time, I think the research done by the Wageningen University also showed that there are many other different ways of research and research questions. And I think a lot of the partners in this program, they also collect data nearly on a daily basis. And I think that's where also grassroots organizations struggle with. We've got all these data and we would like to do something with it. And I think that doesn't need a PhD or an expert. It might more need somebody who is good in communication and who can read, all this data that has been collected and pull out a few things to say, well, this is the trend that I'm seeing. So yeah, that's kind of a two-way reaction. That on the one hand you need quality and expertise, but on the other hand, I think also local organizations can do a lot with the data they have collected. And maybe another point I'd like to say is that we also did, research on what has been done by the academic world on child labor in the 6 countries. And we got over 200 papers in the past 10 years in these 6 countries, which might sound a lot, but it really is not a lot, I think, for such a huge problem like child labor. And we published these annotated bibliographies. They are all on the website. Actually, it was quite shocking to see how little academic, universities are interested in this topic. So that's something that I think we really want to also shout out to the audience that might be working at universities here.
Thanks, Gina. And Jacques is agreeing with you. He's saying it varies from formal to informal research strategies. A simple data collection on a local level will also be able to inform quality programming. So it's a collaborative action and responsibility we all have and share. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for the panelists for the lively discussion, for your answers, for providing a little bit of insights from your country context. Thanks from all the other presenters, the researchers, from Jan as well, for providing us with a better context of the models, of how you have operationalized the models. And let's quickly move on to the final few slides of today. If you can still go to Mentimeter, we have some final questions. Romy, if you can continue to not this one, but the next slide. Yes. So we are curious, of course. We're talking about research, we're talking about monitoring, we're talking about evaluations, learning, and we also aim to learn with this session today, of course. So on a scale from 1 to 5, to what extent has your knowledge on localizing research improved as a result of this session? So to what extent has your knowledge gained after this 2 hours? And please also feel free to answer your question, provide your answer in the chat. If you're not using Mentimeter, we are very curious and very keen to learn from you as well for our final few minutes. So on a scale from 1 to 5, to what extent has your knowledge on the localizing research improved as a result of this session? Not at all, slightly, moderately, very much, extremely. Please feel free to include to what extent your knowledge has increased, improved. And if you're not using Mentimeter, please feel free to use the chat as well. If you can go to menti.com and then enter the code 62840494. Let me put it in the chat again. 8404994. Okay, still answers coming in. Okay, so moderately improved, very much improved, 2 and 1 extremely improved. But it improved, so that's already a good and important learning. Let's continue to our next question. What is your key takeaway of today? So what is the most important thing that you're going to take home, take to your work, do differently perhaps, trying to operationalize the things that you've learned today? Ranier is saying, thanks for sharing this important learning on the interface between research and localization. Thanks, Ranier, for the comments. So what is your key takeaway? Please feel free to share your key takeaway. Important for our learning as well. Your key takeaway. It can be one word, it can be a sentence. So what is your key takeaway of today? And also the people from the WNCB Alliance can answer this question. Eh? Okay, I see a research ecosystem. Keep sharp on how research supports our cause. It's good to see the increasing interest in doing research. It is key not just to learn, but to document lessons learned in order to translate these into program improvements, basically knowledge management. Yeah, beautiful. The mentality shift that might be required in North-South interactions, opportunities of inviting research institutions more proddingly maybe. Okay, key principles of advancing research through localization. Evidence needs to be utilized. Research is open to everybody and can therefore support program implementation more than now anticipated. I think generally speaking, everybody very much agrees on the importance, the why to use research, and also the how eventually to use research for your strategic partnership. Thanks, Agnes. Different ways to address power. Okay, great. Let's quickly move on to our next question. What did you like about the session? One word, and then we will stop in 1 more minute. Our final slide. What did you like about the session? The interaction, great. Excellent facilitation, thanks. Nice combination of presentations and discussions, Q&A, hearing from partners in countries, interactive with the panelists. So thank you, panelists. Rich and diversity of presentations. Yes, I also very much like the diversity of the presentations. Well prepared as well by the WNCB Alliance. And Jan, thanks for coordinating. Okay, I think it's time to round off because we are over time already. So on behalf of Partos, we would like to thank all the presenters, panelists, and participants for your presence here today. The next Strategic Partnership Lab will take place on the 28th of June, and it will be a walk-in coffee session. There will be no presentations, no plenaries, no breakouts, just coffee and an informal talk. So feel free to join us for the 28th of June. It will be a safe space where we're going to talk about anything that relates to the strategic partnerships. For now, please also make sure to register yourself for our newsletter. The link is going to be shared in the chat now. And thanks again, and hope to see you next time.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you for the session.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alexander, for facilitating, and all the best.
Welcome, welcome, and thank you as well, Anna.